I couldn't believe it.
I know. And I was out of there.
All right.
Are we unmuted?
We're unmuted.
Hi.
So we wait a couple seconds as people come in. We are joined today by the lovely Thomas Dunning.
Thank you.
From Dublin, Ireland, by way of
Bridgeview, Illinois.
Illinois.
Southside, represent.
And so tonight, Tom is in town, and we had invited him over for dinner. And then Melissa said, "Oh, is he going to be on the salon?" I was like, "Oh my God, that's Thursday night." It's been a month already. And I thought, well, that's actually great, because I wasn't sure what to talk about. And so then the thing that I was thinking was that it would be great to talk about as someone who is a lover of music and art and all things aesthetic, and that is your fuel. I thought, well, it would be a great thing to kind of take the position of, I'm in the situation right now with the Caligula movie, where it premiered at Cannes, got great reviews, and then now it's entering the tunnel of the bean counters, where it's like, who are the stars? What are the precedents? What are the comparables? Like things that have nothing to do with art.
Right. The spirituality of it just kind of goes,
it's completely gone.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how it's like a tunnel that things run through, where you have all the art that needs to go into something being creative, and then things kind of have to run this gauntlet. But then when it comes through that tunnel, the way that people react to it is based on that same emotion that goes into the creation. Like, we would occasionally get people with the gallery that would want to buy things based on, well, is this artist popular? Or is this a good investment?
Right.
But generally, those people weren't really connecting to the art as much as it was just, they were trying to, like maybe a little bit. What do you laugh at?
We're going to come back to that in a minute. I just need to tell you a moment in my life that is exactly, so it's going to illustrate exactly.
Let's see.
Right. You knew I was going to talk about her. In 2014, Kate Bush did a run of 26 shows in London. First time in 30 years she's been on the stage. And I went there. I saw the show twice. I was very lucky, very fortunate. And I went there on like the last night, or one of the last nights, to meet my friends who were in the show. So I stayed outside. I could hear the music, and I stayed outside the doors of the venue. There's the Apollo in London, the Hammersmith Apollo. And this couple come out after like 20 minutes going, "What a load of all shite." Like they didn't get it, They went to see They spent hundreds.
Tickets.
They were very expensive tickets. They spent hundreds of dollars to go see Kate Bush, but didn't connect to the art at all.
Oh, so you're saying they didn't like that it was such a theatrical?
Well. The thing is that I think that they were thinking that they were going for an investment. To say I saw Kate Bush rather than going to see Kate Bush. Do you know what I mean? So it's this notion of people, when you said investment, people wanting to, people asking, well, should I buy that as a good investment? It's hard because we love art and we do what we do because of our relationship to art. Yet you are also in the business as well.
It was always a sign when someone would start to tell you about their art collection and they would say the word Picasso. Because Picasso famously he loved the money more than perhaps the art at a certain point. And so when someone would say, "Oh, yeah, I collect art. I've got Picasso and Dali," it's kind of like, quite often those were not that those aren't great artists, but the people who were buying that were buying because they went into a gallery where they were told, "Oh, these are blue chip names." And then the people that you'd meet that really had a passionate relationship with art were I mean, let's relate it to music. Like if somebody loves Kate Bush, or if they mention, some random band that you haven't heard of before, like usually there's a rabbit hole there that people would, so not to get too far off.
Caligula.
Well, no, but the thing I was just thinking is I was thinking about how, like when somebody watches a movie, of course people are drawn to things where there's success around it. But the real intimate relationship someone has with a movie that gets them through a tough time, or music that gets them through a tough time. Like nobody says, like I had this really intense surgery and I'm really glad that multi-platinum award winning artist, blah, 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 was in my iPod. It's a song that has lyrics that speaks to them. So my point was just that there's these two sides of it, and then there's that long, narrow tunnel in between.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about how there is a really, really large portion of the world that doesn't. I knew a girl once that she broke up with a guy because he couldn't name a Beatles song.
Justifiable. No, I'm kidding.
But you know what I mean? Like she was like, I just could tell that relationship's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this a lot when, when you're talking to people that have kind of a rigidity in their thinking, that there could be an argument if those people, and those are the people that are attracted often to political positions and all that. Well, why would you even need art? Like, really, what is it beyond just colorful decoration in a room or in your, elevator ride or whatever? And so I have a great entry point.
And I have a great entry point as well, but you go ahead. We'll do yours first.
We'll do mine first. So I was thinking I was going to ask Thomas about, do you want to be Thomas online or Thomas?
Thomas is good.
Okay.
Sir Thomas. But Thomas is okay.
And so then, just as we finished dinner before we were going to come up here, he said, oh, let me show you this painting that I just bought. And I just thought, well, I was like, don't tell me about it. I'm going to ask you about this in front of people because for you to get this back to Ireland will be a huge pain that you're willing to endure because you want the experience of living with this.
Yeah, and that brings me then to my entry point. And for those of you who know Mr. Negovan, who have attended these salons either in person or virtually online, or who have any relationship to Century Guild and the art house that they are, it's great. I actually think of them for myself personally as an educational institution because I learn something all the time. And I'm not an art collector.
Is that why you told me I should be institutionalized?
Exactly. But it was coded. It was in code. It was artistic coded language. The thing is that I'm not somebody who has a huge budget for art, right? But I want art in my life, and I need art in my life. And I think that probably applies to the majority of people who have who want art in their lives. They don't have that money to spend $40,000 on a painting, right? But they might have 400. So the turning point for me, which greenlighted I had started building a small art collection of independent artists that spoke to me. Unknown artists, Mucha in Tbilisi, Georgia. I bought 2 of her paintings because they just were, to me, it was like boom, they hit me, right? And I called you one day and I said, Thomas, I want to buy a poster of a Fellini movie, Il Notte di Cabiria, my favorite Fellini movie. And it had Giulietta Messina on it in both kind of headspaces that she's in that movie, where she's the body prostitute trying to like keep up with the big girls, and then the girl who's like asking God and Mary to help her get out of all of the pain that she's in her life. And this is my favorite Fellini movie, hands down. And I just relate to it. I don't know why, but I do. So, and I called you and I said, is $85 too much to spend on a movie poster, and it was just because it was a tight week. It was a tight month. I was like trying to manage my money, and I was like, can I justify spending $85 on a movie poster that I really, really want? But I needed permission. And then we had a beautiful conversation that I'll never forget. And it was a conversation about, and your words, and I'll quote you verbatim, what price inspiration? Those were your words that you said to me.
That sounds like a brilliant man.
Yeah.
Well, that was me?
That was you.
I was dying. I'm like, what did I say?
And it was, and I'll never forget that conversation, because it what price inspiration? And in spirit, inspiration, art connects me to my spirituality. And you can't buy a relationship with a higher power, but you can have things in your life that remind you of your own divinity.
Yeah,
right. For me,
it's the reminder.
It is. It's the reminder, because for me, I have this problem where I forget and then I remember. I forget and then I remember. And so the art is the part that helps me remember. Oh no, Thomas, you are divine.
Yeah.
Oh no, Thomas, you are beautiful. And I know that. I know that. And that's why I like to surround myself with art. It's funny, in Dublin, people come into our house, and I share a house with 3 other guys, and people come into our house, and like there's just art everywhere. Like my art collection is everywhere, in the bedrooms of the guys, and like they don't even have enough wall space, But everyone, when people come in to visit, they always comment on like, "Wow, I love all the art in here," And I think that people don't often think that they're entitled or that they deserve to have beautiful things or artistic things in their life. And so for me, like I said, that poster, which hangs above my desk in my office and has done now for almost 10 years, that's my green light that says, what, if there's something that speaks to you, you're allowed, just like you buy petrol for the car, you buy clothes, you buy food, you actually get to have a budget for me. I need an art budget, and whether it's going to the theater, whether I'm going to spend 100 euro tickets to see Hamilton, or I'm going to or I'm going to buy a piece of sculpture or something. I always try to make sure that I keep something aside to fill me up artistically. And sometimes it's just getting to the cinema. Sometimes it's just going to see a movie. Yeah. Or going to see a live band. That experience of people sharing their creative energy, and then sharing it with people who receive that creative energy. As somebody who, you and I met working in music actually before we got into the current state of your art world now, but you and I were working musically together. That there's nothing like sharing a creative moment in the moment with people in that live space, which I love, but also of course in the recorded space as well, which accounts for books and film, and recorded music. So that was my thing. And so I bought a painting.
How are you going to get it home? Are you shipping it, or is it going to a suitcase?
No, it'll be wrapped up in all of my big boy clothes. I'll pat it and pat it and pat it and pat it. Yeah. And so that's the painting there, actually, behind us, William Eckert Kohler.
And so why specifically?
So why this painting?
Yeah.
So I have two other Willie Kohler paintings, and one that he did many, many years ago, like in 1983, when he was a young man coming out of college, I think, and another one that he did when at the Art Institute of Chicago. It's called Among the Egyptians, and a lot of his work is quite abstract, and especially the second one that I bought. But the first one is a landscape, a seascape landscape. Then there's the abstract one, and this is one of his more newer styles, where I have an obsession, not an obsession. That's the wrong word. I have a great attraction to blue flowers. And I think it's from Juliette Binoche's dress in Out of Africa. She wore
That
that.
is a seminal memory.
I almost bought that dress on eBay. I actually bid on it on eBay. It was somebody was selling it because I loved that dress. And but I just love blue flowers. And this is the name of this painting is Blue Maple. Maple trees are one of my favorite trees. I grew up with maple trees in my garden, and I just climbed the maple trees. And my brothers and sisters and I, we had the maple trees in our front yard, in our front garden. And I don't know if you remember the house that I grew up in on Olympic Drive, but it was right on a curve, and the two maple trees kept getting hit by drunk drivers, protecting us.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the trees were damaged over and over again. But guys would just come around the corner, hit the tree, and if the trees weren't there, they would have been in the living room.
Oh, wow.
So I've always loved the maple trees, and so this is called Blue Maple. And I was over having dinner at Willie's place with some friends, and he pulled this one out. This is about 2 years ago. It was just after like the pandemic lifted and the lockdown lifted, and I was there actually picking up another painting, but he wanted me to see this one, and we looked at many of his paintings that night, but this one, he saw my reaction to it. He saw that this painting did something to me, right? And I kind of was like stopped in my tracks when I saw it. I haven't stopped thinking about this painting, and he hasn't.
2 years.
Yeah, and he hasn't stopped thinking about me thinking about the painting, but we haven't talked about it. Like I don't think that he wanted to be like, "Hey, you ready to buy my painting?" And I wasn't ready to say, "Hey, you ready to sell me the painting?" Because I wasn't really ready. But now I'm home in Chicago, and his he arranged for me to kind of just see it again, like because I wanted to see it again, and so I was out at Tampere Lake on the south side, at like 131st and Wolf Road. We had a little picnic, and a friend of his brought the painting for me to see, and I have a picture of me holding the painting, and I actually looked like the painting. I had a blue scarf around my neck, and the green tree, the green leaves were the green fields were behind us, and so I just I one of the things I love about this painting is that like his like the other painting among the Egyptians that he has that I have, the more I look at it, the more things pop out at me in time.
Mm-hmm.
So the relationship with the piece, and because there is some abstractness to it. I feel like I'm left to my own. Whether I like it or not, the messages that come through looking at a painting, you can't filter them. That's one of the things about abstract. If you, I love figurative painting as well. And I look at it and I can be like, there it is. There's a lady looking in the mirror, blah blah blah, drinking a cup of tea. But and there's not much more there other than the beauty of it. But with abstract, it's almost like the Rorschach test. What you see is what you see, and it's a very personal experience because what you might see something totally different.
I would say that because this is more in the realm of like the Fauvists, because it's clear that there's a tree. It's clear what the things are, and so the way that developed in a modern art sense, not going back to antiquity or things like that, is that you had artists that were painting incredibly hyper real and super detailed, and I'm thinking specifically of Gustave Moreau and his students. The young kids came in, and it was the Matisse type painters, and they would, as young people often do, they would be stoned out of their minds looking out at the ocean and thinking like, but what if I just did blue? Like how could I possibly, like, his going in and tickling it with lines doesn't convey the feeling. And so when I look at this, that's what I see as the idea that really crystallized with Expressionism after the First World War, which is the idea that the more leaves you paint on the tree, the less you see it. For the essence of it. It's kind of like that line from The Little Prince, what is essential is invisible to the eye. So in that Picasso-ish way, or Matisse, or the Fauvists, by him blocking it in the way he did and giving all the suggestions of light, it does allow you as a viewer to look at it differently with your imagination every day. You might see a different thing hitting in a different way, and it feels more alive often. And I think that when we're younger, because we like order, right? Like our parents are our safety.
Right.
That when you're younger, you tend to be more attracted to more detailed work, more fine work, more realistic work. And I remember at different points looking at expressionism or fauvism or impressionism and just thinking, God, why would somebody, I could have done that, like that kind of cliche, but it's very hard to do well. And I think a big part of why they work is what you said, that it forces the viewer to do some of the work. And so if you're willing to do that, it's more rewarding.
And I think as somebody who has wanted to, well, I think that one of that one of those magical things about art is that you, when you do look at something and as I said earlier, and I kind of blew over it, like, it's not that you get a message, but like your filter, our individual filters, receive the image, receive the sensation of the painting, of the artwork, and something comes up, something comes up. And as somebody who has worked in the helping professions, as doing psychotherapy over the years, as both receiving and providing that service to other people, I love the ideas of, I know that, like, because we all have these defense systems, we all have these defense mechanisms to keep us feeling stable, right? Yeah. And sometimes a painting will bring up a feeling that you might have been trying to, maybe unconsciously or consciously, trying to avoid, right? And then you get this thing that says, oh, you need to. Actually, there's something that wants to be heard here. Yeah. There's something inside of you that wants attention, that is asking to be paid attention to and listened to. And I find that paintings like this one, for example, could really help me to get in touch with those parts of myself that I maybe have not wanted to listen to. And the reason why I like it is that in the safety of my home, or in the safety of a museum, or in a gallery, or wherever, I'm not going to have a big emotional breakthrough and breakdown and crawl on the floor and be like, but okay, wait, delete. I mean, it's happened. But I think that, generally it's that, it's just that quiet, contemplative headspace. I mean,
so what's the difference to you?
Yeah.
And do you think that this is...
But modern art makes me want to rock out, which is a song by Art Group. Where I'm like, I love that.
What do you think is the difference between visual art, like a painting, or music to you? And do you think it's individual? Like, for example, are there some people that are just more visually attuned and others that are more sonically attuned? Or do you think it's cultural, that music is more omnipresent than art? I'm curious what your
the state of music today is a disaster. Like, the industry is
not talking about industry. I
know because I love my music. I love information, but and when I was very young, I loved to read. I loved reading, but as I grew older, my attention span for reading diminished, and so now I use audiobooks a lot more. Because that's how I get the information. I want the story. I want the information. I want the art that the artist, the writer, is communicating. But I know my limitations, and so for that medium, that works for me. I've only recently realized that I actually like sculpture, but I don't. The thing about sculpture is, like, you might have a class on how to appreciate art appreciation classes will teach you how to look at a painting. Yeah. They'll very rarely tell you how to feel a sculpture. I love to touch a sculpture with my hands.
Yes. Because
I love that. But anyway,
that's one of the reasons that ceramics is always the last bastion in any art movement, is because you can't photograph it.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be held, seen in 3 dimensions.
Right.
And with like a painting, you can get a really close representation.
Yeah.
Glass, jewelry, things like that, you can get a great photo of.
Yeah.
But ceramics are even worse than sculpture because it's such microscopic texture.
So I guess if we're to return to your question of music and paintings, you know, they both touch me very differently. I think that paintings for me are a more individualized personal experience, whereas music is more community.
Okay.
Both spaces help me attune to my spirituality. Like, you know, I mean, community is so important for me in that aspect.
Mhm.
You know, dancing at a rave, you know, with like 1,500 people all like, like I'm there, like that, that heals me, you know, and at the same time, sitting and staring at a painting, you know, for 20 minutes at the National Gallery in Dublin, you know, I love the enchanted, like how enchanted I feel. Like I'm enchanted by a painting and entranced.
But taking it away from the community for a minute, because like, okay, we'll say Kate Bush again, because that's one of your favorite artists. She hadn't played since like 1984, right?
1978. And then she played in 2014.
Okay.
It was like 40 years or something.
So the community thing that you just said wasn't an element of your passion for her music.
No, it was maybe not in the live setting.
Okay.
But, you know, in 1985, 1989, I'm putting on the Sensual World, or I'm putting on the Hounds of Love records, and my friends would all lose their minds, and we'd all collectively, you know, experience the pulsations and the drumming and the voice, and be blown away by her writing and her construction and her production and everything that she does so wonderfully. And I think that if I've had other music that I love that none of my friends know, right? Like it's just mine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful too. But when you have somebody who loves, you know, that album, that particular album, the way you love that album, and you're listening to it together, or you're at a party, you know, like, I mean, I used to be a DJ both in Dublin and at my mom's house, party at Peg's. I used to like DJ the parties that I would host, and I loved, you know, that like we'd all come back from the nightclub tracks, and we'd all go to my house and we'd play our favorite songs, and we had that sense of community. And I think music does that. I think it can be a lot harder to have a sense of communal appreciation of a painting unless you're together as a group going on a tour of a museum, and we're all sitting there going, wow, okay, this is is
Yeah.
Because it's
I'm picturing a bunch of people at a museum high-fiving.
Yeah, like, oh my God, this is amazing. Whitler's mother. But there's something though about, somebody told me something that was really interesting. You and I could both look through a telescope to look at the moon. But when I look at the moon, and the second later that you look at it,
mm-hmm.
it's a different image.
Right.
And we're not looking at the same thing. The world has changed. The molecules, the atoms, things have changed. Yeah. No one else can ever see the exact thing that I see. So the visual arts are a very personal thing. You can look at Mona Lisa, and I can look at Mona Lisa, but I'm looking at it from a fragment of a degree different than you are. Even if we switch places, now the light has changed, right? And now, right? So like, there's something so personal, I think, in the visual. And I guess maybe you could say the same would be for sonic, for music as well.
I think as you were talking, I was thinking I could make that argument for sonic.
Sure.
Because
because we all have different levels.
Like, you know, I love Kate Bush.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played a Kate Bush song for anyone.
Right.
You know, like I listen to music. I listen to music alone most of the time. My family gets to hear it.
And your business is sharing visual arts in the community, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that we have different aspects to look at there. It's interesting. Thanks for joining us. This is Thomas and Thomas. I can't believe you did that to me.
It is interesting.
But no, it's great. Next question.
And I think that I'm more likely to share an image than a song because I know so many visual artists. And so part of me making the books, that's like me DJing.
Right.
Me making a book that's just me giving 1 or 2 sentences about 100 different images is me saying, oh my God, you don't know who Joseph Fenneker is? Oh my God, you don't know who Brahm is? Oh my God, you don't know who Gail Pataki is? Like, you know, and thinking people need to know these.
I was at my sister's house and I had opened up Berlin Girls, you know, and I said to my sister, I said, yeah, I got this book. She was like, what's this package? You know, Century Guild packaging is always so distinctive. It's a lovely tape and everything. So I opened it up and my sister, and I look at it, and my sister's looking at it. And she just thought it was a beautiful beautiful book. And it was like one of the first times my sister and I ever sat down and looked at an art book together. You know? Like really. I was like,
I could give you that.
Thank you. Yeah. It was good. It was good.
Someone, I can't see the screen, is just saying that the hardest part of the pandemic for them was when be careful leaning on.
Oh,
with the venues were closed and the community experiencing live music was gone. Yeah. It was rough. It was rough on a lot of counts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was very interesting. Like when you were saying about that with the moon, and I was thinking, well, sound waves move through auditory space, and also everyone's hearing is a little different.
Absolutely.
And there's different sounds that are comforting. To different people. I remember when I never liked the Berlin albums that David Bowie did. I was just like, God, there's something about them that's grating. Well, I learned later that when people are high on cocaine, they lose their high frequencies. And so they're dialing those up to compensate. And so as someone who'd never done drugs, it was like, these sound terrible to me.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, even to this day, they're harder for me to listen to than, you know, other records. But I was thinking just about how that applies to the listener as well.
Yeah.
Like I remember this guy that I knew that was just always on various things. And I remember him playing me Badfinger. He's like, you've never heard Baby Blue? And he played it and it was so loud. And the bass was turned all the way down and the treble was so high. I was like, this is a great song, but this is painful to listen to. And again, just thinking that every human being hears differently.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a hard thing with when you're making a book. If you look at 3 art books, you might see the same painting and it's different colors in each book.
Yeah.
If you listen to a song,
on your phone or versus a hi-fi system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It completely changes. And also I've noticed some things I listen to on YouTube. There's this one song I've been listening to a lot recently, and there's 2 people that have it up, only 2 people. And it's, I think it's Arthur, is it Prysock or something? But it's Sharing the Night Together, the Dr. Hook song. There's a soul singer that did it. And I love this version. And I'm listening to it, and the 2 people that have it up, they sound the different speeds. So somebody's turntable is not set right.
Right.
But so it just reminded me again.
Yeah.
Like how everybody's space, every room is very
different.
I
mean, and even like if we're listening to music in here, like I'm going to get a bounce off of this wall, you're going to get a bounce off of that wall, you know. I guess that when you're raving out to 1,500 people,
15,000 people in
your
mom's house,
I think that the stuff that is shared is big, feels bigger, you know. But I hear you. I can't disagree with you. I agree with you totally.
Do you find with some of the social work that you do, has art come into play as a tool with any of the kids?
Yeah, so we actually have 2 things. That's a great question, and just to say, I am a social work, a child protection social worker for my day job in Ireland, And when I first was introduced to art therapy for children in care, it was right after I moved. It was 2003, 2006, and there was an art therapist, and the kids would come in, and he would just give them a big sheet of paper, and they would just paint and paint. And he had these stacks of these paintings that these kids would do, and that was really interesting. I work primarily with young people who don't have English as their first language, and they don't often have any language to communicate. So we engage creative.
What do you mean don't have any language to communicate?
Sorry, they have their own language. They don't have language to communicate with us.
Okay.
We don't have a shared language.
I was like feral children.
Sorry,
I was not sure.
They're stomping their legs sometimes. No, they actually have their own language.
Okay.
Just as I work because I work with refugee children, and so they come in and they don't have English, but they need to process the war, or they need to process the famine, or they need to process the violence, and so we have a creative play therapist, and she is brilliant, and she uses lots of different modalities to allow the children to create. And the best one actually is just the sandbox. She has a sandbox with little army guys and little ponies and little dolls and all sorts of different things, balls and shapes, and the kids kind of tell their story to her using the sandbox and the different and maybe a little family driving in a car, and then a bomb might go off, and so they're able to communicate their story and just have somebody bear witness to it. And I think that again, that just makes me think of one of the things that I love about art.
Art really is the communication of stories.
Yeah, and bearing witness to each other.
Yes.
Whether it's in art or whether it's holding someone's hand who's in pain, that humanity is for me so beautiful. It's one of the things that I love to be able to do, both, professionally, but more importantly, personally, is that somebody comes to me and says, my boss yelled at me today, and I don't have to poo-poo it and be like, you'll be fine, get over it. So let me bear witness to what you've just shared with me, and let me hold it with you until you're steady again. And we all can do that. And I think that art has made me more sensitive. Art has made me more sensitive because I'm seeking these stories from the artists. I'm seeking the stories of the visual artist, the painter, the musician, the storyteller, the writer. And because I think we are, and I heard this a few years ago, and I love this, everybody is creative. Even the people who don't think that they're artists or whatever, but we're all creative people. And so and I just think that there's something really, so to accept that about myself, to accept that I'm a creative and I have things to share. And I've done a lot of creative work over my lifetime, and I'm really proud of all of it, And I love that there's nothing like last night I got to go see some of my friends make music in a venue, and they created happiness for people for an hour and a half, just sheer unadulterated happiness that those of us in the crowd were just saying to each other, I can't get any happier. Like I can't actually imagine being happier than I am right now. Like we had hit that mark, and that's a wonderful thing about art. That it really can, and it can also bring you to those places of acute grief and sadness and loneliness and things like that. I read a poem today. Somebody sent me a poem. My sister-in-law sent me a poem. 15 lines. I'm bawling in my car, like crying in my car of this poem. It was just so beautiful, like unbelievable. That a poem could do that to me. And I think I'm a bit of a schmuck, but yet here this poem gets through. That poem broke through, touched the center, touched the heart, and opened me up. And I love being opened up. I love how art opens me to not just the human experience, but to empathy and compassion for myself and for other people. For me, that's really why art is so valuable to me, because I think I've struggled with that in my life.
Yeah.
to be authentic, to be empathic, and to be compassionate. And I think people who know me today would say, "Oh, no, Thomas, that you are all of those things." I am those things probably because I've been facilitated by people like yourself, who I consider my artistic mentor, to be able to learn about how to read art, how to let it come in, and even if you don't know, just sit there with it, and it will speak to you eventually.
It's so funny you say that, because I consider you my emotional and authenticity mentor. So it's very funny. If you didn't see the first couple minutes, I've known you for 25 years.
Oh no, more than that.
What year is it now?
Well, we met in 1997.
24 years then.
Is it not 30? Is it not more than
20, I don't know, 27, 28.
97, 19.
We're art people, not numbers people.
17. Oh yeah, 25 years about 25 years.
There's a statue at the Art Institute, and it's
Of me?
Yeah.
No. Kidding.
It's a huge block, and there's a man and a woman, and they're holding hands, but the stone is in the way.
Ooh.
So the only connection that they have is just this little bit. And the reason that always spoke to me is the idea that we feel like we're in communities, or we have our families or whatever, but really, like, you know, when you go to bed at night, you close your eyes, in any situation, like, we are really alone in our flesh shell. And so the thing that, when we were talking about it being stories and connection and empathy, is I was thinking about when I was trying to figure out my relationship to art. There was a house where I used to live. There were a lot of gangbangers that would hang out on the corner. And there was this little kid, one of the guys would bring his son all the time. And I just was thinking, like, the people that I know that love art tend to be a lot more emotionally present. And so what I started doing with the kids, I just would give them comic books every time I saw them. Because I just thought, like, you know, what do you do when a kid is kind of going in this lifestyle? And I thought, again, for me, reading, you know, art culture, and I thought, man, maybe if nothing else, that's just like the tiny foothold you might be able to offer someone. And so I was just thinking, like, you know, how when you're talking about being in a community, for me, it's almost like what you're saying is horizontal. I'm so stuffed up. And then maybe what I'm thinking is like the other axis, which is that, to me, it's almost like the forward and backward. And so something that means a lot to me with art is the value in seeing the patterns that repeat. And the idea is that these things that I have felt have been not just felt before, but transcended. Like, I love learning from other people's mistakes. So I love the idea that you can read perhaps a writer or a poet when they're younger, and then 10 years later, and then 50 years later. Like, for example, I've not listened to it yet, but like Paul Simon has a new record out. I think, well, that's going to be interesting. Like, he was one of the great American poets, and he's very old now. Like, so what's the perspective from whatever he is, 75, 80, I don't know what he is, but like, you know, his perspective when he was in his 20s and 30s spoke to me as I was coming into those ages. So I think that it is the idea that there's only a certain number of stories, but there's an infinite number of experiences, and they just all look a little different. And so when you think about how alone we feel, and I mentioned that statue, and like, we just touch like just a little bit. I feel like what has helped me be more empathic and get out of my head and my narrow thinking is looking at ideas that someone had, you know, decades, if not centuries ago.
Right.
And recognizing that it's like a weird juxtaposition of, I'm not unique, but I am unique.
Right.
You know, like
You're unique like everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a saying in one of my communities. You know, you're totally unique, just like every other bozo on the bus.
Yeah.
You know, like
maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is the idea that it makes me more empathetic to what someone may or may not be going through.
Right.
And if anything, that causes me, I've noticed in my own life, more problems than not, because I will be looking for the empathy when sometimes, you know, I shouldn't be. But I do notice that's actually what it is.
I liked when you talked about patterns, when you mentioned patterns, and I think that people in film talk about Easter eggs. You know, like so. And you made me think that on the new, so ABBA put an album out last year, right? Went to #1 all over the world, right? I'm going to ABBA. I'm sorry, we're welcome to Century Guild. I'm going to take 60 seconds on ABBA. So ABBA
I'm a huge ABBA fan.
I'm a huge ABBA fan, and you should see their concert in London.
Have you listened to the Ark?
I love the Ark. Yeah,
okay. So, I thought that was
you turned me on to them a bit. So anyway, I've been going to concerts my whole life. I've probably seen about 800 concerts, and the ABBA concert in London, ABBA Voyage, is one of the top 5, if not one of the top 2 concerts I've ever seen in my life. So I highly recommend it. But their new album, they have a song called. Guys, I've
got a head cold.
He's got a head cold. He's a head case. He's got a head case. It's about, keep an eye on Dan. And it's about this couple who have separated, and they're raising the child, and they've got to do the negotiations. And at the end of the song, you hear the little riff from SOS, right? And it's like, oh my God, that pattern, like it pulls you right back to maybe the beginning of the relationship of that couple, and it's just, it's so exciting. I get goosebumps. You see, I got goosebumps just talking about it.
People do that a lot in movies.
Yeah.
Like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are a great example. They amp up the nostalgia.
Yeah. Chris Pratt. He came up in conversation the other day, but then it didn't stay in the family space, so I'm gonna not talk about it.
Justin has a question. We were discussing spiritual enrichment that's provided by art as being the reason why someone might want to live with a particular piece. And does that explain the historic difficulty of art sales? One of the biggest things that I experienced was, and this has been a huge, huge thing on my mind recently, is that we did the International Antique Fairs for a long time. And the ratio of someone's budget was generally in direct inversion to their passion for the piece. Meaning, some of the people I know that have spent the most money just keep things in boxes or in storage or, and then there are other people who would come to shows and would always look and could never afford to buy anything, but you'd see them and they would just be soaking everything in.
Yeah.
And so the one of the things that was nice about doing San Diego Comic-Con is then it shifted a little bit where we were meeting a lot of people who said things like, I didn't know you could own this. And there were people in the entertainment world that understood the value of art that was inspiring. And so that's our career really took almost a hard 90-degree turn then. Because you'd still get the tons of people that would be oohing and eyeing over what was there, but they couldn't afford it. But the person who bought something was kind of the same temperament of person, just someone who happened to land a good job at Nickelodeon or, something. Culturally, we have devalued the relationship with art. It's almost like there's that saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So we as artists have been gardeners now,
Mm.
for decades, if not centuries. And I'm, again, going through all this now with the Caligula stuff. I don't care about money. I don't think about it. I'm happy um, to be like, I'll turn down a good paying job if I don't feel any connection to it, because my time is worth so much more. But then I noticed that then that creates, a society for myself and the people like me where we are generally less solvent than other people.
Mhm.
Whereas the people who've made making money their priority tend to like money. And so when it comes then to selling, is it a record? Is it a movie? Is it a book? Is it a painting? That most people think that those should be free. They think of Netflix and, or movies as something that you just stream, you get for free. They think of music, you just put YouTube on, it's free.
Yeah.
And so the days when there was almost the guardrails of technology, like, I'm sure you did this too. You had your cassette deck and you'd record songs off the radio, because that was like our cheaper way when you're younger. But you had to have some technology that helped you capture it.
Yeah.
There's no song on the planet I can't pull up on YouTube right now for free.
Right.
So the only thing that makes me pay for music is the understanding that if I don't put money into that machine, it's a closed loop.
Right.
Same thing I do. I spend an extraordinary amount of the money that I do make on work, putting it back into creative things, whether it's, commissioning an artist or buying something.
Right. And you support Kickstarter. I mean, you and I are both Kickstarter supporters, for artists who are launching projects. And that's always been very, very exciting to get some obscure. I picked up a wonderful what's the little guitar one? Not a ukulele, not a banjo. Mandolin. Yeah, picked up a wonderful supported a wonderful mandolin player playing British folk songs from the last century, like would have been lost.
Yeah.
These songs that nobody's like, and that was great. It was just really great.
My hope is that things like Kickstarter, and whatever platforms can come up in that space, will wind up becoming as ubiquitous as like an Amazon or something.
Yeah.
I think that I know a lot of bands do the meet and greet things now. And I kind of, like, as a fan, I kind of like it, but I also feel like as a performer,
right,
it's a hard thing. It's like if you go to a theater show, it's great to wait out by the backstage door and see
and hope Helen Mirren might walk out. Yes. But you don't know. It's a risk. But paying, when some artist like Jeff Tweedy, who is so generous already with his fans, but exhausts himself. He exhausts himself performing. That the only way that you're making money nowadays is through touring. And as you mentioned, the meet and greets. Like you wouldn't want to have him. You wouldn't want to ask him to do any more work for you. You know what I mean?
He's a great example.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know him, but I think about his music and it's so intimate. And I think, I don't know that I want him to have to entertain me before he goes on stage.
Right. Or even after pouring it out for 2 hours, like, you kind of be like, oh, let the guy go home,
Yeah.
But
definitely before. That's the thing to me that always is surprising, is the idea. But so, one of the reasons I've been thinking about this is we're doing a Gail Pataki book, and
another.
Oh yeah, we can do a big one.
Oh,
and also too, like, she's done all this great work, and she's been my best friend for so many decades, and I'm trying to think about, like, the game you had. And same thing, I'm going through it with the movies I'm trying to make and the music that I'm working on, and it's like I see what you have to do to make money, and it's just so often disconnected from spirituality.
Yeah.
And the part that's really hard is like when younger artists are asking me, I don't want to be the voice that says, you know, you'll never make money. But like, well, I'll say this
Don't
right
quit your day job.
now. I'm thinking about this because like there's a musician who I know, and it's funny because I got this advice from someone else who's a successful drummer. This guy's a great musician. He's got a really good day job, and his music's brilliant. And I was saying to him, you know, you might want to see if there's a balance between the work that you're doing that's a well-paying day job
Mm-hmm.
and letting your art be for you.
Mm-hmm.
And not trying to figure out, well, what do I have to do to make it work in that machine?
Mm.
And so I don't like that that's the answer. And maybe someone would say, well, it's always been that way. But
Yeah.
to me, the technology is what's different between AI with art knowledge. So even if you said, okay, I'm a painter, but I'm going to be an illustrator,
Right.
and I'm going to do editorial illustrations. Well, now those jobs are gone because of AI. I'm a writer, and maybe I can make a living being a journalist. Well, but those jobs are going to be gone. I was doing some Google searches yesterday, and all the sites were so nonsensical. And it took me like a paragraph in, and I'm like, this is AI. That's why it's not making sense.
Right.
Because it's taking things that don't go together. And so I've been thinking a lot about the commerce of art and thinking about how, yeah, technology has made it where we can get every music, every image, all these things, but culturally, if you're a lawyer, no one will expect that you're going to talk to them for an hour,
Right.
and that you're not going to get a bill from it.
Right.
But if you're a painter, like no one, you know, people don't understand it, and society doesn't value it.
Yeah.
But it's also the most important part of our culture.
Yeah.
It's the glue that
And I think that artists get this message that they should be lucky that anyone's interested.
Yes.
And that's, you know,
Could you imagine having that attitude toward an accountant or a lawyer? And they're necessary, you know.
Yeah. It's and an interesting juxtaposition here with myself and Tom is that we're both creatives and we both make art, and I don't have I'm not like I make art because it makes me happy, and it's not my livelihood. You know, you need to eat, you need to keep the show on the road, like, you know, and this is you know, the art house that is Century Guild, you know, it has to you know, produce things that can be shared and that people will want to invest in, so you can make more projects. You know, if you didn't have success with this book, you can't do the next book, right? So it's important.
Kickstarter's been the only way
it's important to support. Yeah, and I love your Kickstarter projects. I mean, it's important that we support artists who that is their path, their livelihood, right? Because they can devote more. But like my friends in Dublin who are all musicians, I don't think I've been there for 21 years now, and all my friends are musicians, and I don't know one whose only job is making music. They all have a day job, you know. Even successful authors that I work. I mean, I have some friends who had very successful books released in Ireland, best-selling lists, and you know, there's still you have to have a day job, you know. So when I make an art project, I like make it, and then I just want to give it to everybody, because for me, I actually have my day job that I know that's going to pay my grocery bill and my rent, so I can give it, you know. But not everybody can do that either, you know.
I'm thinking about it a lot.
Well, you know, I know. I don't mean it's hard. Like it's a hard situation, and I am always happy, as you said about like buying music. I'm always happy to buy music to support, and like, you know, we were talking at dinner tonight. You know, I was listening to something on WBEZ today with you know, and some Chilean DJ was on, and he was just so funny and charming, and they played some of his music. And I got his album for $6.99 on the music shop, the online music shop, and happy to support him. The music was great. He was a nice person. I want him to do, and and he's from Chile. You know what I mean? Like, he's not from New York or from Chicago or LA. He's from Chile. Like, the cards are stacked against you.
You know what's even bigger than the money is just the acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Like, I think that I wish more people knew that.
I've had some good experiences with that. But when we were selling our record online on Bandcamp or whatever, people could pay the suggested amount, and some people would pay more. They'd pay, instead of paying $12.99, they'd pay $20.
Oh,
They'd pay
yeah,
they'd
I do
pay,
that.
and that's so lovely, because it's somebody saying, Thomas, make more art.
Yeah.
Do more. Here's the $12.99 to cover your expenses, but here's $20 actually. Keep going. Keep doing more creative things, and I love that.
It is. It's been an hour.
You said it was 3 hours we had to talk.
I did that just to make an hour seem like it would go by quickly.
Did actually you told me that, so I did it like 3 hours. Yeah, I'll talk. I'm a Leo.
Are you shy? Are you shy about talking?
No, I'm not. What'd you give me a topic? Anyway,
rainbows,
unicorns.
Unicorns.
Anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And continued success.
We haven't been able to talk in person in many years.
We haven't seen each other in a long time.
Thing to do.
Yeah. So continued success with Century Guild, and the educational aspect of what you do is just so invaluable. I've learned so much about art from you. So please continue to do what you do with your collective here. It's great.
Well, thank you so much to everyone who is here. And
can I give my email address?
Give your email address out on YouTube?
Yeah.
Why? What is it?
So if anybody who's watching this, if you're interested, I'd love to send you our album for free. stunningmind@gmail.com. Send me an email, and I'll send you a link to download our album for free. How about that?
Tell people what it is so they know what the album is.
The album is the world's first Kate Bush tribute album, featuring a bunch of artists doing. Sorry, over here. I'm looking at me. So, yeah, we did the world's first Kate Bush tribute album in 1998, and in 2001, we remastered it and expanded it and added 7 songs. So we've got 24 songs. Kate Bush covers, the world's first Kate Bush album, and it sounds gorgeous because we remastered it, and I'd just love to give it to anybody who'd like to have it. So send me an email, stunningmind@gmail.com, and I'll send you a link to download your own personal copy.
Your servers are going to break tonight.
I hope so. I won't be at my computer until Sunday, but sure. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys, and we'll see you next
painting.
First Thursday of every month. And sorry we kept you late, but bye.
Bye, everyone.